They say the suburbs are supposed to be peaceful, and for a while I couldn't argue with that. But sometimes the calmest streets hide the strangest secrets. And you find out that your neighbors only act normal when they think someone is watching. That's when things stop feeling normal. My wife and I had just moved into a modern home on a quiet cul-de-sac in the suburbs, only a few months after she shared the incredible news that we were expecting our first child. We'd spent weeks researching neighborhoods, school districts, commute times, everything. The house we picked was perfect. Just a quarter-mile from a school, tucked away from the main roads, close enough for my daily commute, but far enough from heavy traffic to feel like a little sanctuary. After the movers left and we spent a few hours unpacking, Sharon and I finally slept in our new home 2 nights ago. I've always been a bit of an insomniac, and being in a new house made it worse. I tossed and turned until I eventually saw 2:30 a.m. glowing on my phone screen. With a tired sigh, I finally got up, wandered downstairs, and poured a glass of water. I cracked open the living room window for some fresh air, a habit I'd picked up after quitting, and that's when I heard a faint woman's voice coming from his apartment. Curious, I looked toward their side window. There, barely lit by the moon, stood a woman who looked to be in her 50s. She stood completely still, facing sideways, lifting one hand up and down as if practicing a handshake with someone who wasn't there. I had to concentrate, but I eventually heard what she was saying. "Ah, you're the new residents. I'm Mrs. Ainsworth," she said, before tilting her head back toward the dark ceiling. "What a nice day. Funny to think Halloween is nearly here." The sentence seemed to glitch for her the first few times, like she was rehearsing the lines and couldn't get them quite right. Then she repeated the entire sequence again, handshake pantomime included. I felt guilty watching, and I didn't want to jump to conclusions about any condition she might have. Still, something about it left me uneasy. I shut the window quietly and headed back to bed. The next morning, the smell of sizzling bacon floated upstairs, along with the nostalgic beat of the Pet Shop Boys. The moment I stepped into the kitchen, the house finally felt like a home. Sharon, in plaid pajamas, hair messy, spatula in hand, danced around to West End Girls, singing into the spatula before spinning into my arms. She was glowing with this effortless happiness that made me smile, despite my restless night. "Do you hear that?" she asked, gesturing toward the speaker. "We can finally play music without the neighbors banging on the walls. No chaos outside the window. And look at this!" She pointed dramatically at the granite counters. "I have room to cook." Her joy made me hesitate, telling her about Mrs. Ainsworth. Instead, I joked about her old CDs, kissed her goodbye, and stepped outside into the crisp, golden morning. As I unlocked my car, the hairs on my neck rose. Someone was staring. Across the yard, the woman from last night, Mrs. Ainsworth, stood exactly like she had in her living room. Same clothes, same posture, same hand extended. She walked toward me briskly, offered her cold, thin hand, and repeated the exact introduction I'd heard her practicing. "Ah, you're the new residents. I'm Mrs. Ainsworth. What a nice day. Funny to think Halloween is nearly here." Her smile was wide and unmoving, almost rehearsed. I awkwardly introduced myself and gestured toward Sharon, who waved from the doorway. Mrs. Ainsworth backed away with that same fixed smile before ducking under her garage door and shutting it abruptly. That evening, Sharon and I finally talked about it. I explained what I'd seen, how the neighbor had been practicing her introduction on loop at 2 a.m. She probably wanted to make a good first impression, Sharon said with a teasing wink. Should I be jealous? Her light tone faded when she saw I was serious. She suggested it might be a behavioral pattern she'd seen in clients before. I tried to accept that explanation. Eventually, we settled in for the night, and I nearly fell asleep peacefully almost. But around 2 a.m. again, I woke up to use the bathroom. As I turned to leave, something in the window caught my eye. From the upstairs angle, I could see into several homes around the cul-de-sac. Every neighbor I could see was awake. Not just awake, but rehearsing. In one house, a middle-aged man in a sweatsuit jogged in place in complete darkness, occasionally turning his head and waving as if greeting someone imaginary. In another home, a young adult woman repeatedly practiced skipping rope in her dim bedroom. A few houses over, a man in oil-stained overalls stood in his kitchen, leaning over an invisible project while mimicking tightening bolts with a wrench. Every so often, he wiped his brow with a deliberate, almost exaggerated motion. The longer I watched, the more it felt coordinated, scripted, like they were practicing being normal, as if they were learning. And then the man in overalls turned his head sharply. He looked directly at me. My body reacted before my brain did. I stumbled back, heart pounding, ducking behind the window frame. When I finally forced myself to check again, he had vanished from sight. The next morning, groggy and shaken, I tried explaining everything to Sharon. She brushed it off as exhaustion, stress, overthinking. After a tense moment, she promised she would keep an eye out, though I could tell she didn't believe me. But as soon as I stepped outside, my stomach dropped. Across the street, the same young woman I'd seen practicing last night was now skipping rope in her driveway, the movement identical, too identical, to what I'd watched through the window. Nearby, the man in overalls stood by a white truck, repeating the same sweeping motion of wiping his brow at the exact same rhythm. And the jogger? He was coming down the sidewalk, repeating his double-take surprise face before waving at me, just like last night. They weren't just practicing, they were repeating. I left the cul-de-sac as quickly as possible, but I only made it a mile before pulling onto the shoulder, shaking, unable to drive. I called Sharon, trying to explain. She used terms like overstimulation, adjustment, stress response. But she didn't see what I saw. She didn't see the jogger loop around his house like a character resetting an animation. She didn't see him pause at the back door, his body stiffening before he made a strange movement with his face. Afterwards, he walked inside like nothing had happened. I'm trying to convince myself I imagined it, but there's one thing I can't shake. This morning, Sharon didn't call me babe, like she always does. She called me Hon. She's never called me that in her life. And now, I can't stop wondering if she practiced it. I always thought the Ring camera was for strangers, the random package stealer, the drunk neighbor stumbling into the wrong doorway, maybe the occasional raccoon knocking over the bins. I never imagined the face we'd end up replaying over and over wasn't a stranger's at all, but the neighbor we politely welcomed with cookies and dog treats. If I had known then that what started as nosy behavior turned into fixation and fear, I would have baked nothing and slammed the door instead. I'm a 24-year-old woman living with my 23-year-old female roommate in a quiet-looking apartment building in the suburbs of Atlanta. Quiet-looking being the key phrase, because if you've lived anywhere near ATL recently, you know the city is basically a leaderboard for crime. It's not unusual to hear helicopters at 2 a.m. or to see police cars whipping around corners like they're chasing ghosts. Because of that, we invested early in safety. A Ring peephole camera that works perfectly for apartment setups, a solid digital lock, and a strict rule about checking the camera before opening the door for anyone. For a while, we felt pretty safe, until David moved in. About 3 months ago, the sweet family across from us announced they were relocating. They were quiet, clean, the type of neighbors you hope never move. But they did. And in their place came a man named David. David, who rolled up with 2 U-Hauls full of stuff for a 1-bedroom apartment. David, whose every item appeared to be either anime merchandise, vintage movie props, or Star Wars memorabilia. My roommate leaned toward me, whispering, "Girl, he's building a shrine." I told her to chill. People have hobbies. She had this cluttered vibe that made the whole place feel off. Still, our parents were responsible ones, and we didn't worry for too long. After a few days, we put together a little welcome to the neighborhood basket. Baked goods, dog treats, and poop bags for his dog, and a seasonal candle because Target had them on sale. We walked over, knocked gently, and smiled like the friendly suburban girls our mothers raised. Apparently, that was a mistake. From that moment on, David was, well, creepy doesn't even scratch the surface. At first, it was just annoying stuff. He'd come to his door every time he heard ours open. Didn't matter if we were leaving for work, taking out trash, grabbing groceries, or checking the mail. He'd pop out like some kind of NPC programmed to trigger on movement. He'd ask for salt, sugar, toilet paper, flour. Sometimes he'd ask if we could watch his dog for a minute, which always somehow meant hours. We told him no, politely at first, less politely later. Then, about 2 weeks ago, the vibe changed. 2 weekends back, my roommate and I went to the bars near the Braves Stadium and partied way too hard. We got back around 3 a.m., giggly and exhausted. And there he was, sitting at the top of the stairs, waiting. He stood up fast when he saw us, like our parents catching us sneaking in after curfew. He asked us where we'd been, why we didn't tell him, why we were out so late, why we didn't warn him. I laughed, literally laughed in his face. He scowled and muttered something about me being a mindless Stacy, whatever that's supposed to mean in incel vocabulary. Then he asked for access, yes, full access, to our Ring camera so he could make sure we're safe. We laughed again, harder. We told him to go inside and mind his business, then locked our door behind us. The next morning, over pancakes and Gatorade, my roommate rewound the Ring footage, and our stomachs dropped. David sat outside his apartment, staring directly at our door. For hours, until almost sunrise. No phone, no book, no earbuds, just staring, waiting, like a guard dog, but creepier. That was the moment we realized this wasn't quirky neighbor weirdness. This was obsession. Possibly dangerous obsession. We immediately contacted our apartment complex. They brushed us off and told us to call the police. We contacted the police. They brushed us off and told us to call if he made threats or physically entered our unit. Shared space rules apparently protecting him more than us. Still, something must have been said to him because he vanished for about 5 days. Those 5 days were peaceful. Too peaceful. Then everything escalated. This week he started sitting outside our door again, constantly. Every time the Ring alerted motion, there he was. I work from home, so I'm here most days. But whenever I even approach the peephole, I see him. Knees bouncing, eyes fixated on the crack under our door like he's waiting for shadows. My roommate has begun leaving for work an hour earlier just to avoid him. I don't leave at all when I'm alone. Then came the notes. Dozens of notes. At first they were cute in the most disturbing way possible. Things like, "You looked beautiful leaving this morning," or "I can take care of you better than anyone." Then they got explicit. Graphic. Things no one should ever have to read, let alone have slipped under their door or stuck on their car windshield. One day, when I tried to finally put a stop to it and told him firmly that I wasn't interested, he stared at me like I had slapped him and said he'd do something drastic if I didn't go out with him. Of course, I don't have that in writing, so the police can't do a thing. To make matters worse, he installed his own Ring doorbell pointed directly at our door so he could track every time we entered or left. I cannot explain the feeling of watching someone monitor you just because they can. At this point, we knew we needed help. The complex, the police, anyone, but no one seemed to take it seriously. Meanwhile, we were collecting everything, footage, audio, timestamps, photos of notes, because something in my gut told me this was going somewhere dark. We reached out online, desperate, and the overwhelming advice was, Get someone else in the apartment. Get evidence organized and push harder. So that night, my brother came to stay. Big guy. Intimidating enough to make most creeps think twice. Not David, though. The man stared at him, looked at him with a strange intensity. We set a meeting with the landlord, armed with everything. The meeting was useless. They refused to remove him, refused to let us break the lease, offered us a one-bedroom basement unit that would force us to share. That was their solution. The police weren't much better. He probably just thinks you're cute, said with the tone of a man who has never been stalked a day in his life. They took the videos and promised to review them sometime this week. We left that meeting shaking with anger. At that point, we did the only thing that made sense. We left. We packed bags and moved in with my parents. Paying over $2,000 a month for a place we can't even live in is a uniquely painful feeling, but being safe matters more. We're now trying to figure out how to get out of the lease entirely or raise enough money to move. It's not the ending we hoped for, but at least we're safe for now. And if anyone has ideas for raising about $5,000 in a month, my inbox is open. Some neighbors make noise, some borrow sugar, some keep to themselves, and then there are the ones who make you feel watched, long before you even understand why. If I had trusted that first instinct, that tiny jolt in my stomach every time I caught him lingering on the property line, we all felt real concern in that moment. Because the truth is, this isn't a story with a beginning and an ending. This is a story I'm still living, still trying to understand, still trying to escape. And it all started with a man whose face I'd never forget, even if I only ever see it through a fogged window or a crack in the blinds. My family's lived in the same house for years, a normal suburban place with a decent yard, some old trees, a few nosy squirrels, and neighbors who mostly keep to their own business. Or at least that used to be the case. A few years back, maybe 3 or 4, we got new neighbors behind us. I don't know much about them. I've never seen the wife, not once. No grocery bags, no mail runs, no glimpses through the kitchen window. Nothing. The husband, on the other hand, well, I see him every single day. And he's the type of person you notice whether you want to or not. He's somewhere in his late 50s or early 60s, though something about him feels older, like his face has seen more winters than his body should hold. Thin, long white hair that hangs past his shoulders, the kind that's either a deliberate style or a complete lack of self-awareness. He's about 30 pounds overweight, always slightly hunched, always wearing the same retro Chicago Bulls jacket and slacks no matter the weather. Rain? Slacks. Heatwave? Slacks. Early cold snap? Slacks. And always with his dog. Every morning when I leave for work, he's out there walking it. Every evening when I come home, no matter the exact time, he's walking it again. It's uncanny. Like he knows my schedule, like he plans around it. Our properties touch along a long stretch of worn-out fencing and overgrown bushes, and he has this habit of walking exactly along the line between our yards. Not near it, not around it. On it, as close as physically possible without technically trespassing. And the whole time, without fail, he stares into our bay window. Not glances, not curious looks. Stares. You ever felt someone's eyes on you so strongly that your skin starts crawling before you even turn around? That's what it's like. But staring isn't even the worst part. One afternoon, my brother came over with his 2 kids. It was a warm day, nothing special. We were all sitting on the front porch, lacing up shoes and gathering basketballs, getting ready to walk down to the park. The kids were laughing, hyped to play, and everything felt normal. Then the neighbor walked over. No warning, no wave from a distance. He just appeared, drifting onto our driveway like fog. His dog wasn't even with him this time, which somehow made it even stranger. He started talking immediately, except he wasn't talking to me or to my brother. He was talking to the kids, asking them weird questions, their ages, their favorite games, what school they went to. His tone was oddly gentle, but off, like someone trying to mimic normal friendliness from memory. My brother immediately tensed. I could feel myself tightening too, something instinctual rising up. We both kept trying to interrupt him, asking what his dog's name was. It was the most harmless question we could think of, something to redirect the conversation. Except each time we asked, he froze for a second, like we'd glitched whatever script he was running. He didn't answer. Not once. He just dodged the question entirely and kept talking to the kids. That was the day my brother looked at me and said quietly, he looked like someone from a true crime documentary, and I couldn't disagree. Something about him isn't right. Something about him feels wrong in a way you can't explain without sounding paranoid. And unfortunately, that wasn't the only disturbing encounter. My mom loves tanning in the backyard during the summer. She sets up on a lounge chair in a bikini, sunscreened up, bright towel, book in hand, the whole classic suburban scene. One afternoon, she called me outside with a weird tone in her voice. She'd caught him staring at her, not from his yard, not from a distance, but through a narrow gap in the bushes on the eastern side of our property line, the one spot where the greenery is thin enough to see through if you're trying. She said he wasn't walking his dog or gardening or doing anything casual. He was standing still, watching, like he'd been there for a while. She pretended not to notice, gathered her stuff, and came back inside. From then on, she only tans when someone else is home. Things got worse for me, too. We have a workout room that opens directly into the backyard. I sometimes step outside that door at night to unwind for a minute, just a quick couple hits before bed. One rainy night, I stepped out, lighter in hand, hoodie pulled up, ready to take a few hits before heading back inside. The rain was coming down hard, so hard it was wiping out all other noise. Visibility was almost zero, the kind of night where sound disappears into the air. And then I heard it. Whistling. Not a tune. Not a song. Not even rhythmic. Just long, slow, eerie whistles coming from somewhere in the darkness. Close. Way too close. Coming from somewhere near the property line. The sound of a person trying to get someone's attention or entertain themselves in the dark, in the rain. I cannot describe the cold jolt that went through my chest. My entire body reacted at once. I slammed the door, locked it, double-checked the other doors, and sat there shaking before I even realized I'd moved. And the whole time, in the back of my mind, a thought kept repeating. Was he standing there the entire time, watching me, listening? To this day, I have no idea. But that's not even all of it. Whenever I drive home and pass him while he's walking his dog, he pivots his whole body to stare at my car. Not glance, not wave, just stares as I drive by. And sometimes, just to confirm it's not my imagination, I check my rearview mirror. He's always still staring, every single time, until I'm out of sight. I don't know if he's just a weird old man with no social awareness, or if there's something darker happening behind those blank, unblinking eyes. I don't know what's going on inside that house. I've never once seen the wife leave. I don't know why he appears at the exact times I come and go. I don't know why he watches my family through the bushes or lingers by the fence line every morning. What I do know is this: something is off. Deeply off. And whatever this is, it's not over.